Welcome to Shielded, the podcast dedicated to helping Florida's first responders understand the laws that affect their work and their lives. We bring clear answers, practical tips, and stories to help you when you need it most. If you're a first responder in Florida, this is your playbook. Be sure to check out all of our resources at bicklerlaw.com. I'm your host, Paolo Longo, and I'm here with my partner, Jeff Bickler. At Bickler & Longo, this is what we do. Now let's get into it. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Shielded. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Most of our episodes to date have been sort of single topic, sort of deep dives into individual issues that we see with our first responder clients. Today, we're going to have a little fun and do something a little bit different. I don't know that we got a good name for this, but other than something like a mailbag episode where, fortunately we've been getting lots of calls and lots of emails and lots of questions. And one thing we've noticed is that over the past couple of months that we've been doing these podcasts is that we're getting some of the same questions. So folks are paying attention, folks are studying, and they're asking the same questions. So what we're going to do today is just go through a bunch of those questions that our listeners have been asking and hopefully just provide some more information. Today with me, obviously, is not Jeff Bickler. You can tell by the hair and the glasses, but this is one of our other partners, Kristine Callegy. Kristine, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Kristine is a pit bull. Don't let the smile fool you. When she's on your case, you're going to get, it's pedal to the metal with Kristine, always and forever. And so we've asked her to come on because she gets a lot of these questions too. And we'll tell some stories and answer some questions and hopefully provide you guys some more information. So with that, let's get into it. Question number one that we actually get a lot of. This one specifically, Broward County firefighter asks, how long do I have to file a claim? And he asked sort of three questions was, a regular kind of orthopedic claim, how long do I have to file a heart claim, and how long do I have to file my PTSD claim? So where do you want to start?
Let's start with the heart cases. I think that's probably what most people are looking to hear about most anyway, the information dive. So with heart cases, you've got 90 days from the date of the accident to report your injury. And as usual with lawyers, there's always a it depends that follows that.
You sound just like a lawyer. I trained you well.
Well, yeah, everything I know I learned from Paolo Longo.
Yes.
It's a fact. It is a fact.
That's a warning.
Maybe a little bit. So yeah, 90 days from the date of accident. But there's also that it depends, like we said, right? So for example, I had this case that went to trial a couple of years ago, and this individual was a firefighter, and he had a heart attack. But he thought because it didn't happen on duty that he couldn't get coverage through the heart bill. He knew the heart bill existed, just didn't really know the ins and outs of it. Never said anything, never filed a claim. Came to us for a different reason, and we kind of did a deep dive and found that he had this issue. So we ended up filing a claim for him. And we were able to be successful on that claim because he didn't know his rights and obligations at the time that the accident happened. He only learned from us and teaching him and kind of getting him involved in another case. And we were able to kind of have that it depends exception because he did not know what his rights and responsibilities were back then.
Right. So, but when you say date of accident, I mean, with a heart, what does date of accident mean?
It's a fancy term for the date that your issue happens. It's not necessarily an accident where you're, in a vehicle and you get in a collision or you fall tripping, with your fire hose or, a suspect is fighting you and you break your finger. Those technically are all dates of accident, but it's just a fancy term of art that we use. It's a lawyer term. It's really just, hey, when did your issue happen? That the date.
Right. So if it's a heart attack claim, right, it's the date of your heart attack. Right. If it's a hypertension thing or something like that, a blood pressure problem, it's the date that you're missing work or the doctor diagnoses you, things like that.
Right.
So 90 days from that date, or 90 days from when you figured out that you should be filing a claim.
Right. That your issue is related to your job, 90 days from that period. And in the example that we were just talking about, his 90 days started to run from the day that he and I had that conversation about, hey, this should have been a claim 3 years ago when you had your heart attack. That was the starting point for his 90-day clock to run.
And insurance companies love to fight us over these, this 90 days thing, because they're like, well, no, you had a certain amount of time to report it, and it was a late reporting, and your accident happened, your heart attack was 3 years ago, and you never said anything. But if my client didn't know, I had a case similar to the one you had. It was up in the Panhandle where one of my clients was shopping at Walmart and ran into one of his buddies, and they were comparing bypass scars. They both had bypass surgeries, and the one guy's like, yeah, I'm getting my workers' comp and my doctors and my medicine and everything's being provided. And his buddy was like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, well, I had a heart attack and workers' comp is covering. And the guy's like, well, I had a bypass too, but mine was, I was at home. And the guy's like, no, you need to, call these guys. So when I talked to him, ultimately it was several years after his bypass, but he didn't know that he could file a claim. And, so we were ultimately successful in getting that claim accepted and getting him coverage and all that stuff. His 90 days didn't begin until that conversation in a Walmart. But you raised another issue, which was a question I had down the list, but you kind of already brought it up. And hold on, where is that question and who sent it to me? This was actually another guy up in Panhandle. It's a law enforcement officer. What happens if my issue doesn't happen on duty? Like, what happens if I have my heart attack, or my cardiac issue, and I'm not actually, working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you still can get coverage. The example I always give to people when we're out and about and having these educational events and just chatting with people out and about, first responders, when I'm out walking my dog and the police down the street, I always tell them you do not have to be on duty when it happens. I have a client who was on vacation in Colombia, so he wasn't even in the country, and he had a heart attack. And luckily he had enough sense about him while he was there to get those records. They were all in Spanish, of course, but he was able to get the medical records, and we were able to get that case picked up because even though he wasn't here in the country or on duty, he still suffered a temporary disability because of his heart, because of a cardiac issue.
Right, and thanks to ChatGPT, we can translate those records pretty quick.
We ended up using an expert that speaks Spanish. It was Dr. Costello.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect knowing a doctor that speaks Spanish and can translate the medical records. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one a long time ago where a guy was on a scuba diving trip, and he was like 50 or 60 feet underwater, with his tanks on, and had a heart attack underwater while he was diving. And thank God, they got him up into the hospital and stuff too. And, I don't remember how he found us, but, it's fine. You don't have to be on duty, So the answer to the question is, does my cardiac issue have to happen on duty to be covered? Is a flat out no. I mean, you can be on vacation, you can be scuba diving, you can be in another country. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter because after that event, you're unable to work regardless of where you are, right?
It's the incapacity that triggers the protections of the heart valve, not the fact that it happens on duty. Another client who had an arrhythmia issue when he was on a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean or by the Bahamas, wherever he was, I don't remember. And they ended up medevacing him out of the cruise ship to the hospital. He was able to get the records from the cruise ship, and we were able to get that case picked up as well, even though he was in the middle of the ocean.
Right. Didn't you have an Apple Watch one too, where a guy was, on doing something or running or jogging in the Apple Watch and he wasn't on work?
I've got a couple of cases like that. I had one where he was at home. He had just gotten off of shift, kind of like a midday shift where it kind of put him into, like a 2:00 in the morning dismissal. He was at home trying to calm down and just felt, the rapid heartbeat, and ran an EKG on his Apple Watch. And we were able to get that case picked up after some fighting as well. But that EKG was really the key piece of evidence, a smoking gun, if you will.
Right. No, that's great. And so, the important thing here is you don't have to be on shift, right? You don't have to be in a firehouse. You don't have to be in a police car. I mean, it doesn't matter. So next question, this is actually from a Central Florida law enforcement officer right around in our neighborhood. My employer says that I have to miss more than 7 days of work to be covered. Is that true?
No, that's not true. You have to miss more than 7 days of work to get paid from workers' comp, but you don't have to miss more than 7 days from work to get coverage under the heart valve. Absolutely not. That's someone spreading misinformation so that people don't file claims right there.
Right. Well, that's the insurance company taking some truth, right, where you have to be out 7 days or more to actually get paid by workers' comp, and then just including, well, if you don't get paid by comp, then you're not covered. So, that is a complete misrepresentation of the law, right? You can miss 7 seconds and be covered.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter, right? There's the 7 day thing is, if you have a heart attack and you're going to miss a month of work, you have to be out 7 consecutive days before workers' comp starts paying your lost wages. Okay. But getting your wages paid is not different than having a covered compensable claim, right? You don't have to miss 7 days to have a claim. You can miss 7 minutes and have a claim. You don't even have to miss any work to have a claim, right? You can go from full duty to light duty and never miss 1 minute of work and still have a claim. So and I get this call a lot. I mean, I don't know. I get a lot of these calls where like, they told me that if I didn't miss more than a week, I didn't have a case. And I'm like, oh my God, no, that is not, I just want to take out billboards and run them across I-10 and, up and down 95. You don't
Everywhere.
you don't have to be out 7 days. Right. So I think that's an important distinction. Well, and that kind of ties us up into another, sort of a ancillary topic is, if I'm out of work more than 7 days, how am I getting paid? How am I getting paid? Who's paying me? That's a question we get. That's almost a daily, certainly weekly, but everyday question, how am I going to get paid?
Mm-hmm. And that's another one that has that it depends caveat, because it really depends on your agency. There are a lot of agencies that have the collective bargaining agreements that allow them to get full pay 100%, no matter what they're doing, no matter what the issue is, whether it's a heart bill or some other sort of injury. As long as they're out for workers' comp, you can get 100% pay, no interruption.
But that's only a certain time, right? I mean, that may be 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 16 weeks. That's not indefinite though, right?
Yeah. And that's very dependent on what the CBA says as well. Some of them have a 180-day limit. Some of them have a 2-year limit. It really depends on how good your agency is negotiating the CBA, the union reps. And the follow-up to that is, when you don't have a CBA that says that, typically you would receive checks from workers' comp every 2 weeks. It's a 14-day scale, bi-weekly payments, and you would receive 66 2/3 of your pre-injury earnings. And then if you want to get to 100% pay, typically HR will supplement that with your leave time that you have in your bank, so that you're not, going without your mortgage and paying for your groceries or things for your kids, that sort of stuff, and also paying for your health insurance. That is another important distinction that we get a question a lot about on the leave time that people are using when they're out. That part of that is used to pay your portion of your health insurance premiums if you have a portion that you have to pay and the employer doesn't cover 100%.
Right. So essentially, regardless of a CBA, right, the comp is going to pay 2/3. And if you've got leave time or sick time or PTO time, you can use that to supplement the 1/3. So at least you're getting a full check.
Correct.
Some agencies have, full pay status for, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180, however time it is. But assuming even if you don't have that, or if it runs out, comp's going to pay 2/3. And you're going to supplement your own, you don't have to use your sick time. I mean, I've got some guys that they don't have any sick time. So they're just getting the 2/3 part, and that'll motivate somebody to get back to work. But, sometimes if you have a surgery, you got to take the time off.
Right. Can't go back.
But we get that a lot, how am I going to get paid? Now there are some, it's never going to be a full, it's not always going to be a full paycheck, because comp pays, most folks make more than the max comp rate. So there are some caps and there are some limits. Everybody's case is a little bit different, but in general, if you're going to, the 7-day thing is only to get paid, not if you have a case. You don't have to miss 7 days to have a case.
Yeah, and then after you miss more than 21 days, they're supposed to go back and pay those first 7 days anyway, but you've got to wait for those 21 days to pass before they do it. A lot of wonky rules and regulations we have in our system, that's for sure.
Yep, 100%. Next question, South Florida police officer, how do I actually report a claim? Is there any difference between reporting a claim for a heart case, an orthopedic case, a hearing loss case, or et cetera?
That's a great question, but theoretically they're all the same. So the way that you would do that is either through your supervisor or HR, asking them to file what's called a notice of injury. And that's the official first form that goes up to the workers' comp carrier to let them know that you filed the claim. They open their file and start the process. Now, sometimes you'll get a supervisor that doesn't want to do it or doesn't know how to do it, and that's okay. I always tell people, tell them, hey, thanks, I'll call you back, and then we can do it. It's a very easy form to fill out, and some agencies have a supervisor's report that will come along with that, where you kind of got to fill out more detail about what happened. But the notice of injury is just kind of a bare bones, hey, on this date at this time, I was in the hospital for AFib or I had a heart attack. The language doesn't really matter too much as long as you're identifying what happened and what the issue is.
Right. But a lot of times, I get this a lot, especially from, Central Florida and North, right? They don't want to fill out the forms, So if you've got a supervisor, a boss, a chief, whatever you want to call it, that's not, hip to the law, then what do you do? How do you report a claim? I mean, are there magic words that you have to fill out? I mean, if somebody's not going to do the form, and I can't, and the person can't locate the specific workers' comp form, what's enough?
Well, asking them to file it would be enough for notice, like we were talking about before, the time frame to report it. Asking them to file it and putting them on notice verbally would be sufficient within your 90-day window or your 30-day window, whatever it may be for your type of injury. But actually doing the paperwork, if they refuse, then you're going to have to get somebody who is qualified to do that. So giving us a call, I can do that form in my sleep. You can do that form in your sleep. It's a 1-page PDF. We type on it and we can just send it in very easily. So if someone is getting pushback, it's a very simple thing for us to do.
Yeah, we've done that 100 times. We fill out the form, we give it to the guy and have him go turn it into HR. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Also, just sort of a side note, if you can get a copy of the injury report, right, get a copy of that, because I've seen those things disappear, jump into shredders,
lit on fire.
I mean, I've heard every story. My client goes and reports the injury, they fill out the form, and then all of a sudden the insurance company's like, well, the guy never reported it, we don't have a notice. I'm like, well, my guy's got a copy, here it is. So you want to keep copies of that stuff, because also you want a copy to make sure that it's accurate. They put the wrong dates, they put the wrong body part, they put something, and then they try and use it against you that you're committing fraud by putting some other thing on there. Any piece of paper that HR is going to generate, you want a copy of, right? Yep. Period.
And double check your personal information too. I had a case years ago where the HR person transposed my client's social security number, two numbers in the social security, and it wasn't in his file, and they made that argument, oh, well, he never reported it because it was in someone else's file.
Or, I could see them saying, trying to throw a fraud defense out, by giving a false or misleading, information or something like that. Yeah. That's a good point. I never, you can have my social security number, take my identity. But that goes, so it's, the question was, heart, orthopedic, hearing loss, any injury, it's the same, right? Does it matter what kind of injury it is?
No, it's all the same form, whether it's a heart case, whether it's hearing loss, whether it's a broken peeking finger, it's all the same notice of injury form. It all goes on the same piece of paper.
Got it. This is a pretty simple one, but we get it a lot. In workers' comp, can I pick my own doctor?
No, unfortunately. The answer to that is a big fat no. We wish that we could. It would be a lot easier, but the adjuster has control of the doctor that you see. And she also has control if you don't like your doctor and you exercise your one-time change. The adjuster still gets to choose your doctor. No matter what the specialty is, they get to choose the doctor that you're seeing.
Right. The short answer is no, you don't get to pick your doctor, right? There are some things you can do. If you, and the reason is who pays picks, right? That's like what you tell your kids when you're going out for dinner, right? I'm picking the restaurant, right? So if they're paying, then they're picking. You do get it if you don't like the doctor. You do get to exercise your right to a one-time change. You get a new pick, but again, you're not doing the picking, and sometimes you can go from the frying pan into the fire with the new doctors. The one doctor that you can pick is an expert, right? I mean, if you go to one doctor and you don't like what their opinion, or you disagree, or they're recommending some course of treatment or something like that, you have the right to select an independent medical examiner, right, which is basically our own expert. And we do get the right to pick that doctor because they are, unfortunately, they're not in it for the long haul for treatment, but we do get to get their opinion as to, is this surgery necessary, or is this therapy necessary, or is this treatment related, or would it be better to do something else? So we do get some fight back, but the short answer is, do you get to pick your own doctors? No. We did try. Jeff and I spend a lot of time in Tallahassee every year, and we've been pushing for right to choose on these heart bill claims. We haven't got a bill passed yet, but we've been talking to some legislators who are willing to sponsor this legislation for at least on heart bill claims, on the presumption claims under 112.18, that to say, look, these first responders are serious claims. They need to be able to choose their own doctors. There's not a lot of cardiologists around the state that will accept workers' comp, so it gets to be difficult sometimes. I mean, orthopedics, you can swing a branch anywhere and hit an orthopedic, a knee or a shoulder or a back guy, but you're not going to see a lot of folks, in the cardiology area that are workers' comp doctors, right? So, a lot of times the carriers end up having to authorize our client's doctor anyway, because there's no one else to send them to. So we're working on some legislation, but unfortunately the law as it sits right now, as of this podcast, is you don't get to pick your own doctor. But that's a good question, and we get a lot of that. And so there's no dumb question, ask them.
Exactly. There's never a dumb question when it comes to legal stuff.
Yeah, there's only dumb answers, but no dumb questions.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, 100%.
Yeah. Kind of related to this, we get this question a lot too. Can I get gas money for going to the doctor and medical related travel?
The answer to that is a little bit. We don't call it gas money. We call it mileage reimbursement. And so what you do is you fill out a form, and there's 100 different versions of the form. It doesn't really matter which form you use, but you track your starting location and your end location, and then your end location back to your starting location for a round trip total mileage amount for your trip to the doctor, your trip to physical therapy, your trip to the pharmacy, anywhere you're going for your workers' comp claim and you're using your own personal vehicle, you can get reimbursed at 44.5 cents a mile, which is buttons compared to gas prices and the IRS rate, but that's what we're stuck with. In our statute, like Paolo said, there's only stupid answers, no stupid questions. And you can get your tolls if you have a toll going to and from your doctor or your pharmacy, and parking. Some doctors, especially down in Miami, some of them have parking fees for, the big office buildings or wherever they may be located. So as long as you've got receipts for all of that, we can submit it all at one time, and then they've got 45 days to pay you back.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not really technically gas money. I mean, they call it, medical mileage, but essentially it is gas money, right? I mean, if you're going to a doctor's appointment, a physical therapy appointment, a medical test, blood work, even if you go to the pharmacy, right? If you're driving back and forth to the pharmacy, you get, 45 cents a mile. And I always encourage my clients to do this, right? I mean, look, if all you're entitled to under comp is a cup of coffee, let's get a full cup, right? So just do it. And sometimes, especially for my folks up in the Panhandle, it may be 40 or 50 miles, one way to the doctor, right? So, I mean, if you're driving an hour there and an hour back, I mean, 45, 50 cents a mile adds up. I mean, you might get 70 or $80 for that trip. I mean, at least that's going to, I guess, cover your gas, I mean, nowadays, who knows, but it does help. And so I always try to encourage my clients, and we'll send you the forms, I mean, we have them, well, I used to have before, PDFs, right? We just had stacks of them, we just mail them to you. But now, we just email them, print them out all you want. The one thing I will tell you is, make sure if you're going to fill out a mileage form, go to, Waze or Google Maps and put the exact, 26.28 miles from your house to the doctor and back. Don't ballpark it. Don't round up, because you sign that form and, you're misrepresenting, then you got problems with your claim. Don't round, just get a calculator and add the 28.26 miles times, 2 there and back, put the exact percentage point, miles, and then, send in the form and do it. And so, I mean, we've had some cases too, where, I mean, we're talking about like thousands of dollars. We go back like a year, somebody going to physical therapy 3 times a week for 2 years. And they're like, oh, I could get mileage. And I'm like, here's a $4,000 mileage check,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I had that too. I had a guy who had a really, really old date of accident who came on with us as a new client. And I was talking to him about mileage and tolls. And he sent me his SunPass report. It was like 4 years of tolls. And I think probably like $4,000 just in tolls that we got him, not including the mileage. He had no idea that he could even make a claim for that.
And that's going to piss an adjuster off. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And that's the best part.
And that's that's like the icing on the cake. I mean, it's not even the $50 for gas mileage. It's just making them, write the check. It's like, look, you're dragging this guy, 30 miles to a doctor, and he probably passed 10 on the way to his doctor. Then, you're gonna pay him mileage.
Exactly.
Now, kind of related to mileage is transportation, right? So if you, and that wasn't really technically a question, but I mean, it's kind of related. So, lots of folks may not be able to drive after an injury. Okay. So you can get transportation, right? If you need to go to physical therapy, if you need to go to a doctor's appointment, they will come and pick you up, take you to the doctor, take you to therapy, do whatever you need to do, and then come home. Like I had like lots of, definitely after a bypass, you're not driving, for like 6 weeks, right? Because you got that big scar, and they don't want the seatbelt and all that stuff. You're not driving anywhere, and if your wife or spouse is working, or they're got to pick up kids and you can't get to an appointment, then, the transportation will come and pick you up. I mean, I've had cases where, even, some pretty significant cases where guys had to do like aqua therapy, water aerobic therapy, because they couldn't really walk yet. They had to do stuff in the water, in a shuttle coming to pick them up every single day and take them to the pool and therapy, and then take them home and do all that stuff back and forth. So, not really in the same vein as mileage, but it's also important to note in that area.
And there's specialty transportation too. I had a client who had a really bad back injury and neck injury, and he wasn't able to drive, but he also wasn't able to sit up all the way. So we had to track down a very special mode of transportation, a very special company that could transport him laying down safely, so that he wasn't stressing his neck and wasn't stressing his back. It took a bit of time to find it, but the adjuster was able to do it. We got him there, we got him home safely, and we were able to do that for the few months that he was on those restrictions.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so there are some benefits. I mean, yeah, you get medical mileage, yeah, you get transportation. Those things are available, but unless you you're giving up a lot of stuff potentially.
Right.
And then the last question I had for today. This is a firefighter up in the Jacksonville area. Does workers' comp really get access to all of my medical history?
And another, it depends. So it
You sounded like a lawyer, Kristine. I mean, is this really, it's.
I don't know. They gave me this bar card and this degree, so I kind of have to, pick up all the lingo. But the it depends. It's a caveat for mental health, right? So when you see those requests and the subpoenas come in from opposing counsel where they're asking for people's medical records, unless your case is a mental health case, they are not allowed to access your mental health records. I will always object on that. The judges will always back us up on that. But if you've got a knee injury, they're going to go and get all of the medical records back to when you were born at the hospital if they can, right? They want to get
Right.
everything in their ability to argue that your injury isn't work related and use all of your history against you. And the statute says that workers' comp can do that. They can access your medical history once you make a claim. You kind of put that into fruition by making the.
Yeah, but there are some limits, right? Like I'm gonna object to like dental records, right? I mean, you're not getting my pediatrician records, I got a lot of, female clients, right, who, may have a shoulder surgery or, a knee injury. There's no need for, gynecological records or, birth stuff. I mean, that's not relevant. So we're gonna fight that stuff. Unfortunately though, if you, for example, are making a PTSD claim, okay, or a mental health claim or anxiety, something like that, then those records obviously are going to be relevant. So, the answer to that question is they may not get everything, but if you're making a claim for a mental nervous injury like PTSD, then, when you were seeing a counselor for 10 years, then, those records are going to be relevant and the judge is going to make us turn those over, right? Because it's in the neighborhood of the claim, right? I mean, they're only going to, the general rule is they're going to have access to things that you're making a claim about, right? I mean, if you're making a shoulder case, gynecological records are not going to be relevant. But if you're making a knee claim, mental health records are not relevant, right? Dental records are not relevant. We're going to put up that stuff, but we're going to fight on those issues. But, if you do make a claim for a specific injury, any relevant treatment that you've had we're gonna have to turn those records over.
Yeah, and with the mental health claims, typically the providers are going to require a supplemental release, even when the defense attorney sends a subpoena to the therapist or the psychiatrist. That provider is going to require a special release. And when I get those in, I look at them and I limit the time frame because they'll have no end date in sight on that release. And I always make them edit it down to 6 months or 3 months, depending on what the issue is, so that it's not unfettered access to this person's mental health record forever and ever.
Right. No, that's a good point. So I think that's going to do it for us today. If you found this episode to be of any help, please like, share, follow. You can reach us at bicklerlaw.com on our website. You can email us at info@bicklerlaw.com. You can follow us on socials at bicklerlaw. We appreciate your listening, and as always, we thank you for what we do. Thank you, Kristine, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for listening to Shielded. At Bickler & Longo, this is what we do. We've represented thousands of first responders across the state of Florida. If you need assistance, don't wait. Please reach out. To learn more, head over to bicklerlaw.com or email us at info@bicklerlaw.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bickler Law. And if you found today's episode to be helpful, please share it with a fellow first responder who might need to hear it. Until next time, stay safe and thank you for all you do.